Today we're going to talk about brining these amazing thick pork chops. We're going to make our brine using water, salt, sugar, and we're going to elevate it with some Buffalo Trace bourbon. But the first thing we're going to do is take off the layer of skin on these pork chops. So we've got a beautiful layer of fat, but we've also got the skin. Once we've brined our pork chops, it's going to be very difficult to get the skin on the outside to crisp up. You know, when you see these crackling videos where you drag the knife across, it relies on the skin on the outside being very, very dry, almost brining it with salt the night before to draw out that moisture. By brining it, what we're going to do effectively is put flavour into the actual meat. So when you season something, you only really season the outside surface of the meat. When we brine something, we're going to add some flavour into the actual pork chop, and we're also going to make it tender. So let's make the brine, and then I'll show you how to take the skin off the pork chops. To make your brine, add a litre of water, 50 grams of salt, 50 grams of brown sugar, and whisk. Then add a double measure of Buffalo Trace. Time to take the skin off the pork chop, place it onto a firm surface, positive pressure on the top, and use the knife to remove the skin. You'll leave a little bit of fat, that is fine. Get them into your brine, and that is done. The pork chops are now in our brine. We took off that skin, so we'll keep that, we'll crisp that up separately and make a nice little bar snack. But now into the fridge overnight, 8 hours minimum, but overnight at best, and then I will show you the next steps tomorrow. Little recap on yesterday. We brined our pork chops in a simple brine solution of basically 50 grams of salt, 50 grams of sugar, a litre of water. You want enough liquid to cover your meat completely. So if you're doing something bigger than a couple of pork chops, just obviously adjust your recipe of the brine. So 2 litres of water, 100 grams of salt, 100 grams of sugar. But we basically made this a little bit epic by putting some Buffalo Trace in there. We also took off the fat, the skin of the pork, which we've dried out, which is now like basically rock hard. So this will crisp up nicely and make some amazing pork scratchings, like homemade pork scratchings. But what we're going to do with the pork is basically get it on the Kamado Joe. We've got it ripping hot, 250 degrees Celsius. We're going to get some nice colour on the outside of these pork chops, and then we're going to move them across to the other side of the grill, which I've got set up for indirect cooking. We're then going to let them slowly come up to eating temperature. We're going to use the meter to monitor the cook. But effectively, we've done our seasoning for these pork chops by placing them in brine. The Buffalo Trace that's got some really nice autumnal flavours in it is going to basically flavour our pork chops, so we're not going to season these anymore. If you do want to season them, by all means, but make up a rub that has no salt in it whatsoever, because you've basically put salt into these pork chops by brining them. So yeah, if you want to season them, literally make something maybe with no salt or very, very little salt, because you've effectively salted them already by putting them in the brine. So all we have to do now is get our pork chops onto the grill. Nice and hot, cast iron grates are on. And once we've seared them on the outside, we'll put the meter in and monitor the cook via the app. Hot grill, we'll just lay this down, get some nice connection to the grill grate. And the same with our other pork chop. What we want to do is build up a nice sear on the outside of these pork chops. So I'm literally just going to give them a couple of minutes before rotating them counterclockwise to get some nice sort of grill marks on them. You don't have to do this. You can just flip them. It's only because I like the way the grill marks look. And once you've got a nice crust built up on your pork chop, you're going to move them across to the opposite side of the grill that we've set up for indirect cooking. Because internally these are not cooked. Although they look charred on the outside, they will be raw in the middle. So what you need to do is let them come up to safe eating temperature. As mentioned, we're going to use the meter wireless thermometer to monitor the cook, and all you need to do is remove the meter and put it in the center, the thickest part of the pork chop, so we get a nice true reading of that meat. Once we get the notification that they're done, we move them off and let them rest. We got some nice sear marks on the pork chops. We grilled them each side probably for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then we moved them to the side of the grill that had the deflector plate in, so no access to that direct flame, because the meter doesn't like the temperature to be too hot, otherwise it can break it. We then used 2 meters for the pork chops, 1 in each, and we wanted them to come up to 63 degrees Celsius, so we should have some nice pink pork. And now it's just time to slice them. We let them rest. The meter tells you how long to let them rest, so we followed those instructions. We've got very little juice on the board, which is a good sign. Basically, we want all that juice to remain in our pork chop. There's only a little bit around the board. So now let's cut into them and see how we've done. When we slice these, we're going to go straight through the center, and then we're probably going to slice off a good sort of pencil thickness worth of meat. So we've got 2 pork chops. These will probably go around about 4 people because they're really, really thick. They've got the bone on, so you can take that bone off to make the slicing a little bit easier, like we've done here, and then just continue to slice them to your desired thickness. And I'll show you again for the second pork chop how we just remove that bone, but it's a similar process to carving anything off the bone. You want to remove that bone first to make the rest of the slicing easier. There we go, nice succulent pink pork, and there, just cut it to your desired thickness. We've got some nice char marks on the outside. As I said, the board is nice and dry, which means the meat has retained a lot of its juices, which means it'll be nice and succulent. So yeah, just a nice variation on cooking a pork chop. Brining it is a really nice way of imparting some extra flavour into your meat. Why not give it a try?